Welcome back, everybody. This is part 2 of Korean War, the USMC official history book, part 2 with your host, Jeffrey Scott Zeiser. This is for History 103, History Since Reconstruction. This is for Cerritos College, but it'll be on YouTube, so anybody who finds it useful, I hope you enjoy. This comes from, last time we were talking about Inchon-Seoul a little bit. This comes from Volume 2 of the Marine Operations in Korea, Inchon-Seoul Operation. Same author as part one. By far, the first two are the best. We'll do a little bit of the third one next time. But this is from USMC, United States Marine Corps. This is the base text we'll be using today. So, worth the read. It's 400 pages. I read it back, let me think. I read the whole thing about 5 years ago. It's pretty good. All right, as normal, let's get into it. Okay, we have their maps. Again, these are open source maps. So last time we discussed, again, we'll just look at the picture, then I'll explain the picture, right? We start down here. Basically, the Allies, aka America, with some Koreans and other factions, got pushed down to just this little bit, this little pocket, right? The Pusan pocket. So what we're going to talk about today is here, September 15th, right? So this is, shows you the borders on the 16th of September. So basically the plan, you'll see here, is short. Naval invasion right in the middle of Korea, cut it in half, start attacking. Now remember, we talked about it last time. The Allies, let's be honest, the United States mostly, spent most of this retreating. And except down here, where the Marines got a couple victories, mostly miserable. Alright, so the goal of this operation is to invade, again with the date, right, with the Marines, the reactivated Marines we were talking about last time. And take pressure off the South so they can attack, force the Koreans to retreat. The map, hi everybody, it has October 1st, 1950 here. Right. Within a couple weeks, they pushed the Koreans, North Koreans, out of the South. So we already have a spoiler. It worked! Hey! So there you go. But let's get into it. Let's get the details. Okay. So this is basically the challenge. So in June, right, June, July, the war starts. We talked about the response already of the United Nations, and etc. But there was significant advantages. The North Korean People's Army was going to defeat the Republic of Korea. There's not even a hint that they had a chance. And we talked about the initial response, which is denounce it, sneak an election. There was a vote through the Security Council that was the Soviets happened to not be there. It's convenient. And reminder, right? Truman orders U.S. air and sea forces to go support the army. They move stuff from Japan, which is like right here. They start bombing, and that's the thing America can do immediately. By the way, which was bombing runs. Let me see. Do I have my images? Oh, we do have it. Okay, I went through all my old videos and saw like, hey, what? Oh yeah, here we go. We're talking air raids. We got to watch B-29s do a thing. Here we go. So now you have some background images while I talk, everybody. So this is, again, one of America's advantages is obviously they still have a lot of arsenal from World War II, right? So they have this strategic, and that means like the whole theater advantage is the U.S. is in the water and the U.S. is in the skies. So it's not a straight, one could say, air quotes, fair fight, right? So we have this happening. I'll leave that up. Okay, so now we talked about the Marine Brigade getting reactivated, but almost immediately this Inchon-Seoul landing was planned. Almost immediately from the very beginning of the war. MacArthur's idea, remember he's the supreme general of the theater, and he is generally known as a risky thinker, and they thought this was nearly insane. That's how risky people viewed it as. It wasn't in the end, because the United States had the veterancy and the skill and the equipment. But going into it, it seemed nuts, if that makes sense. So what's the challenge? As we already saw last time, right, the Marines were needed down here just to hold. 8th Army wasn't enough. So they're still worried about what can the Army do. Plus, and by the way, reinforcements have been pouring in, and the draft had started, and there's more veterans, but it's pretty quick. Okay, so reorganizing the forces. Basically, by this point, the Republic of Korea forces are completely absorbed into the U.S. Military structure. They were no longer an independent military unit. They were under the U.S., And they were, because it's supposed to be a liberation war, the U.S. really wanted them to fight. So they keep their divisions and units together. They struggle the whole war. And then the secondary way they'll use them, you'll see it in some of the videos I have today, actually. Ooh, look, bomb fix. Is a lot of the American units will have Koreans seconded to them. That means they're not part of the military, but they're aides. They're actually called coolies, right? Like people who will like carry your stuff and build your camp and stuff like that. So that was the way. By the end, that's how a lot of the Koreans ended up helping. Look at that strategic bombing. Oh my goodness. The picture's a little small, everybody, but when you see just carpet bombing, it's almost shocking that it doesn't work. See all that? Those aren't trees. That's explosives. My goodness. It's psychologically damaging, but they're not that good. Okay, so basically now they have the trouble, the U.S. did, is they're under strength and have worn out World War II weapons. Okay, if you've never used technical, like, machinery, all machinery wears out, which is not great. A secondary problem is the basic light tank the U.S. was using. They're called M24 Chaffies. They're pretty good tanks. They're light tanks. They were fighting Soviet T-34s. So basically, it's end of the war American pretty good light tank against the end of the war very good Soviet medium tank. Now, there is air support. We're literally watching the video, but it was very limited. That is to say, there's almost no coordination between the Army and Marines and the Air Force. The Air Force just got totally different command structure, totally different missions. And then the bigger concern here, MacArthur pointed out early, is the worry of Red Chinese and Soviet intervention. Like, okay, what if we go here and the Soviets join? Right? Because look at this map. Soviet Union's here, China's here. And the whole war he's worried about it. Eventually he'll get fired for that, by the way. And now, interestingly enough, MacArthur himself recalls the competence of the 1st Marine Division during World War II. So he's like, that's where he gets his idea for the amphibious assault of Inchon. He's like, we can cut the supply lines, we can end the war, right? It's attacking here, get it over quick. Remember, the U.S. is currently losing, so it's seen as a big risk. And he gets the General Shepard from the Marines, brings the 1st Marine Division up to strength, and they plan this attack. Remember, we start in June, the attack's in September, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. Okay, and we already got some of the intro of Marine operations. I'll even change our video now. Hey, I have more of these. They're all archived. Isn't that fun? We'll do some, because we're talking about the Marines, we'll do some beach resupplying. That's short, though. So this is how you have to get the supplies to Korea, everybody. Remember we talked about coolies? See these Koreans? They're doing they're doing work, but they're not officially in the army. They're like, a lot of them were forming army, etc., and they'd help do supply stuff. So literally it's in the picture. Okay, so basically all these veteran World War II commanders are basically planning how the heck are they going to do it. So they fly into Japan. Almost all the planning, by the way, was done in Japan. That's where MacArthur was based. It was currently occupied by the United States. So the commanders fly out early, meet with MacArthur, start planning basically what you're seeing on the screen here, right? Amphib operations. How do we land and attack? And if you'll notice, they actually still had amphib tanks. That's actually what this is. See, an amphib. That's actually a truck. It's basically just a quarter-ton truck. That's an amphib. But that's what they're planning to do in this war, right? They want to attack the land or the ocean. So, do I have that on here? No. Air situation. We already saw the B-29s. Even this book points out, the Marine book, B-29 were misemployed against tactical targets. Dissatisfaction among the Air Force and ground forces. Those huge bombers we just watched weren't any good at helping the ground forces. Carrier aircraft were much better, but at the beginning they're only used deep strikes and strategic strikes, even though there was close support. And jets, there was jets. The Americans finally had jets. We had the video last time, actually. Let's see if I have a... is this it? Oh yeah, that one. I think I have another one too. Flight deck. Here we go. Oh yeah, so we're using old World War II vintage. We're talking about air power, so let's have an air power video. That's the Corsairs here, right? But we'll also see some jets. But there's limited aircraft. This is actually, they really need aircraft. That's why these Corsairs came back. They carry a boatload of ordnance, and they bomb very well. But they needed air-ground liaisons. And by the way, this is going to be basically the Marines. As we mentioned last time, The Marine policy is Marine close air support for Marine ground forces. So the Marines interface for their own guys with those ground support officers who are pilots, calling in Marine pilots. So it's all the same branch. They're very well integrated. And as it says here in this book, the Marines believe their own flyers, trained as infantry, are better. And by the way, all the research, there's several studies on this at this point, vastly proven. The Marines, this is necessary. All right. So, and we already did last time talking about how the Marines basically saved the day down here with the 8th Army. So, okay, the Marines are effective. We got that. So, training and preparation. Like we already talked about, there was talk. There's one of the fighters. That's one of the F-6 Panthers. One of the jets. See the little jet intake there, everybody? Nice. Anyway, the Marines always were practicing. As we talked about the first lecture, there was that energy to basically delete the Marines. Right before this, in 1949. And the Navy was actually fighting tooth and nail to keep them. But every year at Camp Lejeune, the Marines annually conducted landing operations, and they generally try to keep their training standards high. Now, at this point, they were mobilized. As we talk about, there's about 70,000 Marines. So there is a chance here. Now, tying us up to California, basically they move everybody into Camp Pendleton, right? That's South Orange County, North San Diego, that giant Marine base that's still there. So they start moving everyone through that. Okay, let's see. Anything else I want here? Training and preparedness, we did that. Anything else I want for mobilizing? Let's see. So yeah, they basically have to expand all these units that used to be divisions that are now regiments, and they need to turn them up again. Now, they got the volunteer reserve, which if you don't know, if you ever sign up a contract in the military, you're in the reserve for a long time. So they can call you up again if there's a war. So this provided 50,000 of their necessary soldiers. And they mention here, why does this matter? Well, because 99% of the Marine officers were World War II vets at the beginning of the war. Let me say that again. 99% of the Marines officers are active war veterans. 5% of the enlisted were veterans. So, but your leadership has done this before. That is a big deal. And we're looking at this right now, by the way, everybody. Pilots are all officers. And by the way, it's a land base. They eventually force the Marines to fight on the ground once they conquer enough, just so they don't have to land on the ships all the time. So here they are at a Korean land base. So they eventually take land bases too. So the Marines, their pilots and their officers are veterans, basically all of them. Hey, look, there's a Mikoshi, or a funeral procession. Interesting. Kind of depressing. Okay, so but they did give deferments, basically people who couldn't make it, and they still managed to hit their veterancy very quickly. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else here. Preparations. Okay, and basically the Marines knew from the get-go, this is what they're doing. And that first Provincial Marine Brigade we already talked back, we talked about was in the Pusan perimeter. They actually they were the ones counterattacking, we already talked about. And they're actually going to help as part of the counterpush as well. They tried to take them out to re-invade with them. It didn't work. They were too popular. Okay, let's see here. Logistics. Basically, you got to get all these guys across the Pacific Ocean in time to invade with the skill to do it. So they do a lot of this prep in Camp Pendleton. They do a lot of planning. And it was considered very challenging. We'll see the terrain on the next one. It's a big inlet. It's a huge port. Lots of islands. Lots of places to put mines. And basically, they need high tide and right before nightfall to land. I mean, the book is called Victory at High Tide, the one I have that's specific just for this invasion. All right, let's see here. Okay, let's introduce this. So General Smith, who shows up in Korea, is briefed. And the Marines immediately see how complex and risky this is going to be. So they meet with MacArthur and discuss that, okay, MacArthur, this is going to be rough. And it's understood, oh, look, we got civilians. There we go. So, rough, everybody. Okay. And he has an interview. This is General Smith, one of the Marines. And they basically they look at it, they try to learn about it. The MacArthur staff is super pumped. They think it's going to be great. So what's MacArthur's vision? What does he think is going to happen? He's super confident in their ability to prevail at Inchon. He viewed it as you could end the conflict quick. It's just one stroke. We're going to lose or win with this. Let's do it. And he understood the risk, and he basically just trusted the Marines. Now, this is rare where you have a army commander who likes the Marines. This is an artifact of World War II, right, where everybody worked together and there wasn't inter-service rivalry as such. At this point, basically, it's just the Air Force. People want to win, right? They want victory was the goal. So there's several conferences in Tokyo to plan this out. Now, what are the biggest challenges? A word I'm sure you don't know, but just in case, hydrographic. Understanding the terrain of the port. It was very shallow, and the tidal ranges are huge, which means you can get just stuck out in the ocean for 12 hours. It's not great. The defense was seen as very good, so it was pretty complex. Now they basically plan for a late afternoon attack, and hope that their maps are good. And then they drive inland, try to capture the capital. So I'll show you over here. So the capital of South Korea is Seoul. So that's why they're attacking Incheon. And remember, there's mountains everywhere. There's basically one major pass this way, one major pass up the coast. So if you take this and take Seoul, any units down here south of the line will be cut off. Especially see that big arrow here? And they got here by September 26th. So it's like within 10 days, if we can get to the central South Korea, theoretically you could cut off everybody down here and capture them. That's the idea. And then end the war because your enemy guys left. That's what they're going for at this point. All right. Let's see. We did the initial planning. Is there anything else I want to add? People tried to offer alternatives for different. MacArthur wouldn't budge. He just didn't care. Let's see. Amphibious planning. Anything I want to add here? Oh, they basically adapted plans from invading Japan in case there was a war after the war. It was basically useful. Because, again, these are huge operations. And they moved their units they're going to use in it as fast as possible. This includes they had to fly battalions and ship battalions from the Mediterranean. Like, that's how few troops there was. They had to move them from Europe. But they basically assembled it, got to the Far East within the time frame. And remember, some of these guys are coming right off a boat, right off a plane, and invading these soldiers. So you got to give them a lot of credit. Now, there's a lot of limitations here of space, personnel, time, and equipment. The ship they're planning on was called the Mount McKinley. Limited space, there was close quarters, and there's an attack force planning force, and they did their best to try to force it all in, and the interesting part is it worked. And they were keeping the army tied in. Remember, MacArthur is the army general. Because they're trying to coordinate pushing down from the south and invading from the top up here. Okay, let's see. Oh, that did not have an animation. That's okay. We'll start here, though. Okay, so there's some worries about last-minute substitutions and that kind of thing. I'm actually going to switch pictures. Where's my... Because we're talking about this. It's a great picture. Oh, here we go. Cruisers. Sorry, everybody. I get excited about these old videos. Next semester, we'll have more of them. This is the kind of support we're going to get. This is an old cruiser. The United States needs to bring back some cool cruisers. There you go. Cruiser. Nice. Okay, so now we're talking about how do you work this out. And then there's a need. The 8th Army doesn't want to pull out those first Marines that are helping support the army in the south. The admiral himself, a guy called Strobel, figures out the compromise. He'll put a regiment on a boat as a floating reserve for either point who needs it. And the army almost didn't accept it, but they ended up doing it. So it's basically called a floating reserve because they needed all the Marines, but the army's afraid they're going to collapse in the meantime, right? So it's this compromise of how do we even do it. Now, the next section I don't even have on here. Naval gunfire. That's what this is, everybody. On the D-Day, 4 cruisers, including the Manchester, were positioned about 1,500 yards offshore, while destroyers went right up to the shore, like 800 yards, and they're just directly shelling. And they mentioned L-45. They just start launching rockets and shelling. I think they did 3,000 shells in an hour. And the LSMRs, these are the bigger landing craft, shot 1,000 5-inch rockets in the initial invasion. Okay, and then they talk about the initial landing. Do I have it on here? I gotta have it on here. I don't have it on here. There's a place called Wolimdo. It's this little thing here. See this little salient? It's like a man-made island. They basically land here first to test it out and then use it to support the invasions here and here. And this is the wider map right here, Seoul. So they're basically landing here first, seeing what the North Koreans will do, and then attack the city below it and on top of it. And you'll see this little blue line. Here's D+1, D+2. So they managed to take this island. Then this is their line of advance, here and here. So, spoiler, they win, right? Obviously. So they have coordinated fire support. This is the key, what the Marines and Navy are very good at. The naval gunfire, air support, artillery, mortars, rockets, everything worked together to shell where the Marines needed it. And the Navy, if you don't know, the Marines is a subsidiary branch of the Navy. It's the Navy's ground forces. Oh, by the way, there is helicopters in this war. Very primitive ones, but they do exist. And when we talk about landing craft, everybody look over here. Like, these are World War II basic landing craft they're landing in. Like, they're open-topped. The bop, it's D-Day. The front flips open. You charge out. Whew. Okay, anything else with the planning I want? Okay, let's do the embarkation and assault. Okay. They prepare, but all the prep is in Japan in a place called Kobe, which is near Kyoto. Do I care about the challenges? We kind of already talked about those. I'm good. Okay, so the assault, they basically, the 10th to the 15th, they do a preparatory assault on that place we talked about, Wolimdo, to just see if it's possible to take it. And they're basically doing a test assault to see if it's even possible to take anything. So they do an initial bombing on the 10th. They do carrier-based attacks for 2 days. They send a destroyer on the 13th of September to just test it out. And then on the 15th, I'll move this over, they have the first landing. It's called Green Beach. That's over here. See, it's Green Beach right there. They land on Wolimdo. So it starts the 15th. And it's pre-dawn. They get ready. They go do it. The initial landing is at 6 a.m. The first wave of Marines land. They have minimal resistance, and it was narrow. Some of these, I think this one is like an all-concrete landing zone. Like, some of these are terrible landing zones. But they managed to secure the whole thing. There's actually a big hill on it. They secured the crest within 20 minutes of attacking. Minimal resistance. Again, nobody expected this, right? It's like, it's so risky. Why would it happen? They have armor supports. They have 10 tanks, flamethrowers, etc. This is still when people used them. And they find some fortified positions here in the north end, and the tanks help them take it over. And they basically are able to set up here and start shelling and observing the enemy in this city. Again, this is a city assault, a city amphibious assault. So you're not attacking cities is already hard. You're attacking a fortified city from its harbor. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so we have this operation we covered. Let's see here. Next. I'm skipping. We did our breach preparations. I'm skipping that. Okay, Red Beach. That's this top one here. This is literally hitting the top of the city. So 2 companies are the first assault and the second assault. And then this time they are under fire. The LST, the landing craft. They hit, and this one they're attacking a seawall, everybody. That's just a concrete berm, basically. And they're worried they can't advance. Now they end up advancing. They're fine. So basically by 22:40 at night, they actually are able to hit their objectives. Hey! And they take the hills that are covering the approaches, which is pretty good. And they get to their AO line the first day. That's here. That's their basically objective for the first day. And they get into the city, which, again, it's not guaranteed when you do one of these attacks. And then there's some notes on Blue Beach down here. What are some of the challenges? Rapidly assembly, inadequate tactical training, limited intelligence on the enemy and beach conditions. And there was problems like ship breakdowns for the Navy and crew conditioning. So everybody's struggling because it's basically a peacetime army doing an invasion. And crazy down here at this Blue Beach, There's one dirt road exit from this whole beach. You can't get off it otherwise. So had they been ambushed or something, oh my goodness, it would have been terrible. And there's mud flats and all kinds of things, but they managed to get off. And funny, there's a lot of very good commanders. For example, there's a Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Ridge. Him and his executive officer basically divert assault to a different area, so it's a less terrible idea. Like, they just make the idea because they don't want their guys to die. And it works. So there's a lot of ground level good thinking here. Let's see here. But yeah, they basically start hitting their objectives. They do pretty decently. Let's see here. Beach security. Did I even have it on there? I don't really care. No. Okay. Operational challenges. We're good. Skip that. Strategic maneuvers. We'll get to there in a second. Just pointing out, once they hit, they have to get supplies on the ground, everybody, which again is not automatic. And then one thing they do, interestingly enough, because they did this, they restore the civil government immediately. Because again, they conquer Inchon in 2 days. They get here, right? So they actually restore it to Korean control immediately. It's both propaganda victory, and they do not want to deal with it. Literally by the 18th of September, 3 days later, they have an induction ceremony as a chief executive of the city. So again, it's those like propaganda victories that matter. All right, let's see here. Oh, is that already the next page? Hold on, everybody. Not yet. Okay, good. I'm just checking my notes. Okay, now to give you an idea how well this went, the initial attack was basically a couple tanks tried to counterattack this. And they managed to, with their own tanks, they have M26s, which are Pershings, which are heavy tanks, thank goodness. The Marines still had those. And they managed to fight them off. They blow up all the tanks that counterattack, and 200 Korean infantrymen. There's minimal Marine casualties. So again, it's super shocking. And basically it's going so well, people are arguing who killed the T-34s fastest. It's probably the Pershings, the tanks. They had 90mm guns. They were pretty awesome heavy tanks that didn't quite make it into World War II. I wish I had a video of a Pershing. I don't think I do today. Okay. Now, General MacArthur, to just show how great it is, he was in the fleet. He comes in, and him and the admiral and the staff officers come onto the port just to show confidence in how well they're doing. So the Supreme Commander shows up. He gives awards. The most famous one is to Colonel Polar. Chesty Polar is the Marine colonel who's in charge. If you want to read crazy Marine stories, go look up Chester Polar. He's super famous. So they're already giving awards and celebrating day 4. So the plan now is to basically break out of here. As it were, I said, movement towards Kimpo. Right? They start to get out of here and attack the next cities. So they find parallel roads with their tanks. They have light tanks too. And they basically find a way around they get 5 miles out of town. They start to attack out. Do I have it over here? I do. Can I see? So here we go. They start fighting their way towards Seoul, almost immediately actually. And they launch an attack to get out of here, right? So to get out of Inchon and push their way forward. And at this point, they're actively fighting the Koreans. And this is the 17th, 18th. Already, it's only been 3 days, and they're counterattacking out of the capital. But generally speaking, enemy morale was demoralized and disorganized. And some of the Korean units maintained discipline, but mostly they collapsed because of limited forces, poor coordination. They had no intelligence this was going to happen. Completely shocking. And all the counterattacks the Marines did have, they successfully defend. And the reason they go for Kimpo, which is somewhere around here, it has an airfield, which they managed to capture basically intact by the 18th of September. And then that'll allow them to land planes, right? And this gets them air support, and more importantly, they can fly in supplies. And then they land some fighter squadrons here, especially naval close air support from the Marines. They land a couple wings, and they start supporting their own guys in close-in operations. Okay, let's see, air operations. I'll talk about this too. Let me see if I got any great air pictures. This is our Sicily. Did we already do that? We did. But we're talking about air, so I'll leave that up. That's fine with me. Oh, rockets. Nice. Okay, so at this point, it was only a week. And basically, in a 1 week, they moved 1,000 tons of equipment and 500 tons of ammo into this airfield they managed to capture, which again is a big deal. The command of the whole unit is still in Itami in Japan. They haven't even made it. They haven't gone yet. But now that they have an airfield, they literally are flying in and flying back and forth to plan. So this is a big deal. They basically got their beachhead. And now they're planning to cross these rivers here, right? They're planning to invade. And they do eventually land some non-Marines, but not yet. Okay. Oop. Sorry, everybody. So here we go. So the map here, they're basically attacking this city towards this direction. That's what we're going to talk about. And if you'll notice, a lot of it, they bypass the city. But they also attack it. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, we're still on the ship. That's fine. And that, I think, is a Pershing, everybody. You see there we're talking about a Pershing? So, there's a nice picture of one. That's a flamethrower. Hey. Okay, so they're basically attacking towards their capital. That's what's happening next. It's called Manhangri. It's a city between Seoul and Inchon. And basically, the Marines are assaulting, and again, they're not being stopped. They have to fight. How many troops got down? On D-Day... Is that right? That's pretty great. They got, roughly speaking, 70,000 units down. That's pretty impressive, including army. Okay, so they start fighting this way towards these cities. There's so much detail here, everybody. Now, finally, they are having heavy fire and casualties. So the enemy are finally defending. As the book points out, Marines finally are facing determined and well-prepared enemy. This is where the naval and air support, again, we have the naval pictures here too, right? Plays a key position. So whenever an enemy position starts fighting, they just start bombing it, and as we saw with the last picture, they start shooting naval guns at it. For example, the cruiser we showed last time, one cruiser called the Kenya, HMS Kenya, which is a British cruiser, if you can't tell, his or Her Majesty's Navy, or His Majesty's ship. 600 shells on one position. Yes, that is pretty intense. And the British were here too. So the Navy allies supported a battalion to the maximum naval gunfire and volunteered to render more aid. So again, the British are here helping. They're pumped, of course. And the Marines lose some guys, but they're now pushing up. And intelligence shows there's little enemy activity, but they are starting to build up. So basically, after 3 days, the enemies weren't sure it's a feint or not. Now they're getting ready. So 1,000 troops are sighted. And by observers, there's recon. They now know the fight's getting real. Let's see here. I'm skipping this. I'm skipping that. Let's get to the Han Crossing. Okay, here are the Han Crossing and subsequent operations. This is basically September. Okay. So the Marines were smart to use a lot of armor to cross these rivers. Again, it's harder to blow up a tank in an armored landing craft, right? So they minimize their casualties. They have very good covering fire from machine guns. And if you don't know, they use Amtracs for this. And this is crossing a river. Remember, more amphibious crossings. So again, if you want to do a bunch of amphib crossings, get Marines. And then they're basically starting to take the hills closer to Seoul. And Seoul is surrounded by hills, everybody. This is very intense. Now they start to actually take prisoners at a decent number. And they've pushed up far enough. MacArthur visits again. And the Admiral, General Shepard and Admiral Strubble actually watched the assault of the Han River. So they're not that terrified of dying or anything. And MacArthur himself visits the front, including the zone of the 1st Marines, where there's a battle going on. And again, he goes from Kimpo, the airfield they captured, and flies to Tokyo. So it's that supreme confidence in their efforts. Let's see, is there anything else I want to add about the ferry cross? They basically managed to capture a ferry and ferry their people across. There's another battle at a suburb called Yeongdeungpo, where the Marines are fighting a division, which is like 10,000 guys. It's strategically isolated, and defense was only symbolic. I'll show you the picture really quick. Down here, Yeongdeunpo's right here. So it's isolated from Seoul, but it's like a moral victory. So the Marines start attacking that too. And there's a division that's a full strength communist division's 10,000 troops. So it's not nothing, everybody. And it was given to the Marines to engage, the 1st and the 5th Marines. And they have to enter enemy minefields, there's counterattacks, there's lots of resistance. But the plan gets revised, basically, because the enemy was doing a last-ditch defense. And they're basically hoping to flank them. And we get battle for all the hills. Do I have one of them on here? I do. Battle 118, there's way more hills, everybody. But there's famous hills for the Marines, etc. So this is a hill in the middle of, near the airfield on the way to the suburb. They basically have to take it. It's a decently famous battle. It's defended by 500 Koreans, North Koreans. And again, close air support in the Navy is a big deal. How does it go? 4 Marines killed, 18 wounded, 350 enemies are killed and wounded, and 5 captured. So, hi everybody, it's nice to have aircraft, Marines, and naval support, just, generally speaking. Alright. So they have the battle for Yeongdeunpo, which is trying to capture Seoul. And then they finally move in Army. The 32nd Infantry finally joins. And they relieve some of the 1st Marines, a battalion of them. Now here's the problem, of course. Marine and Army liaison was very weak. And they try to plan an attack, which doesn't work great. They still take it, but it's a rough fight. And now the Koreans are organized enough, the North Koreans, they're now counterattacking. The kills aren't bad, but again, they have rocket support, they're getting shelling, they're trying to capture all the hills around Seoul, which is basically the goal. There's a bunch of hills I'm skipping. Alright, and we're skipping that. The battles, anything else on add? Okay, so there's so much sub data here. I'm trying not to get too lost in it. But basically, the battle for Yeongdeunpo was very competitive. The Koreans were finally getting their act together and fighting, although half of it's in the hills, half of it's in the suburbs. It is pretty brutal. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I want to add here. There's a lot on the planning, which doesn't matter that much for us. The short version is, though, they actually end up taking it. Casualties are decent. They're not bad. That is looking weird. Hold on, I gotta change my video. Let's do... We'll do an evac video. It's fine. It's 5 minutes. How long is this? This is after the battle when they're retreating later, or getting evac. Show you some of the naval operations. Okay, battle for Seoul. It is a victory. They are forced to attack Seoul, as we saw on this map up here, right? They attack it directly and bypass it. That's generally the way you want to attack a city. You don't want to straight charge in. It doesn't always seem to work. So 25th, so the 24th, 25th, they finally attack Seoul. So again, everybody doing your math, that's 9 days. It's pretty good. And at this point, the UN forces around Pusan have finally attacked. Several corps of the U.S. Army and their allies are advancing. How well does it go? This invasion worked so well that there was 70 miles of advance in 1 week. So again, looking up here, right, in a week this happens, right? So you have 1 week around here, right? So because the 25th, where's our dad? 24th, they're taking Seoul here, and by the 26th, they've already got all this far. This was armored cavalry. They got, see this little link up here? This is very symbolic. They got a very fast army unit and just said, dude, drive for it. And they just punched through and drove all the way to Inchon to get all these guys to surrender or get them defeated completely. So there's finally that energy to attack. And as I said, strategic encirclement. That whole subunit we talked about on here, these are now all surrounded, and then these ones are running. So about half the army is encircled, which is a big deal for trying to win this war, in theory. Okay, what else do I want? Let me see. Anything else on the Battle of Seoul? Nope, there's a lot more, but I'm going to end it there, I think. Let's see if there's anything else I want to add. No, I wanted to go 40 minutes. That was perfect, everybody. So again, this is just a huge Marine, Navy, Army operation. It's worth not skipping. It's that great to say that it's one of the events of probably Marine and Navy history that's impressive. And it basically prevents the war from being lost. Good job, Marines and Navy. All right, I'm going to end it here. We'll have one more part 2 of this where we'll do basically to the Chinese border and see what happens. You can't see me smiling, but yes. Oh, there's a Pershing. Hey, remember I mentioned those heavy tanks? That's definitely a Pershing. That might just be a Sherman then. That looks like a Pershing to me. See that long old gun? That's their heavy tank with the turret turned backwards. Nice. I was hoping. We got a Pershing. I'm just going to look at this for a minute. I like tanks. Yeah, there we go. American heavy tanks. Hooray, everybody. Okay. I'll end it there, everybody. We'll have one more half, time permitting. Thank you for watching.